Egypt continues airdropping humanitarian aid over Gaza. The Israeli National Security Minister storms the Al-Aqsa Mosque again. And Iran's foreign minister announces that the IAEA agrees to a new framework for cooperation with Tehran.
والله العظيم ولا حبة رز، والله العظيم ولا حبة عدس. ما فيش أكل، ما فيش شرب، عندي بنت 2.5 صارت تشطب.
These were the headlines, the news in detail. Following President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's directives, Egypt has continued dropping humanitarian aid over Gaza, aiming to support Palestinians amid dire conditions. Egyptian military spokesman stated that over the past 3 days, 9 Egyptian military aircraft delivered dozens of tons of food supplies to areas inaccessible by land. These airdrops coincide with Egypt's ongoing efforts to send aid trucks by road, reinforcing its commitment to providing comprehensive support to Gaza's residents. Aid trucks have departed from Egypt towards Gaza, including 2 fuel trucks carrying 107 tons of diesel. This move resumes fuel delivery essential for powering critical facilities in the Gaza Strip. The fuel trucks will help restart hospitals and bakeries, supporting the restoration of vital services in the region. The third group of Egypt's 6 Red Crescent aid convoy has departed for Gaza, marking the largest number of trucks sent since aid deliveries began. This significant convoy carries a wide range of humanitarian supplies, including several tons of essential goods, to support those in need in the Gaza Strip. The National Alliance has launched its 11th humanitarian convoy to support Gaza, consisting of 200 relief trucks. The convoy, organized in coordination with 13 institutions from the National Alliance, carries 400 tons of essential food supplies tailored to the urgent needs on the ground in Gaza. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati has affirmed that Egypt remains the steadfast supporter of the Palestinians and will persist in backing the Palestinian cause until an independent state is established. Speaking at the 6th edition of the Egyptians Abroad conference, Abdulati condemned attempts to malign Egypt's supportive role, stating that Israel exploits these baseless campaigns to mask its own crimes. Egypt's foreign minister emphasized that the hostile attacks against Egypt aim to divert attention from Israel's sole responsibility for the Gaza tragedy. Egypt's Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has reaffirmed Egypt's commitment to securing the Palestinian people's legitimate rights, foremost the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. Speaking at the 6th edition of the Egyptian Abroad Conference, Madbouli condemned any attempts to displace Palestinians and emphasized Egypt's steadfast foreign policy principles regarding the Palestinian cause. He added that despite regional turmoil, Egypt has maintained its security and stability. Madbouli furthermore added that Egypt continues diplomatic efforts alongside Qatar and the United States to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. Now we move on to the latest developments in the West Bank. Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, accompanied by followers, has stormed the Al-Aqsa Al-Aqsa Mosque after leading a provocative settler march in Jerusalem's Old City. Marking the so-called temple destruction anniversary, Ben Gvir declared intentions to build the temple and impose sovereignty, even threatening Gaza. This day is deemed one of the most dangerous for Al-Aqsa, with extremist groups planning the largest incursions, exploiting full government backing amid unprecedented incitement. His actions challenge religious and legal boundaries, escalating tensions sharply. Later, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz also More than 3,000 Israeli settlers have stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque in what the Islamic Waqf Department described as an unprecedented provocation. The mass incursion, led by far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben Gvir and several Knesset members, was carried out under heavy police protection. According to the Waqf, settlers performed Talmudic rituals, waved Israeli flags and carried Torah scrolls near one of the mosque's gates, while Israeli forces restricted Palestinian access to the Old City. The Palestinian presidency has strongly condemned Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben Gvir's storming of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, with spokesperson Nabila Burdina calling it a move that crossed all red lines. He urged immediate international intervention, especially from the US, to halt what he described as escalating Israeli provocations, settler violence, and the ongoing war on Gaza, while demanding the swift entry of humanitarian aid. The Palestinian Ministry of Awqaf and Religious Affairs has strongly condemned the storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque by far-right Israeli Security Minister Itamar Ben Gvir and several Knesset members, calling it a blatant provocation to Muslims worldwide. The ministry warned that Islamic holy sites face daily violations under the protection of Israel's far-right government, accusing it of working systematically to assert control over both Islamic and Christian sites. It urged international bodies to take immediate action to halt the ongoing desecration of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Hamas has condemned the storming of far-right Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben Gvir and Knesset members Amit Helvi to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, calling it an escalation of aggression and a provocation to Muslims worldwide. The group warned the move threatens regional and international peace, urging the UN and global community to hold Israel's governments accountable and take urgent action to stop systematic violations against Al-Aqsa. Jordan has condemned the strongest terms the storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque, led by Israeli far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben Gvir, calling it a flagrant violation of international law and the historic status quo of the holy site. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Sufyan Al-Qoda warned against the continuation of such provocative and illegitimate violations of Islamic and Christian holy sites in Jerusalem, demanding Israel halt all actions by Ben Gvir and settler groups. Jordan, as custodian of the Al-Aqsa, said the repeated incursions reflect the extremist Israeli government's policy of dangerous escalation in the occupied territories. Thousands of Palestinians held mass rallies and demonstrations across the occupied West Bank to mark the National and Global Day of Solidarity with Gaza and Palestinian prisoners. Events were also organized in the diaspora, calling for an end to the genocide, forced starvation and displacement policies imposed by Israel. Protesters carried Palestinian flags and banners demanding international action to halt the Israeli assault on Gaza and secure the release of more than 10,800 Palestinians imprisoned by Israel, including 49 women, over 450 children and 3,629 held under administrative detention without charge or trial. Australia's iconic Sydney's Harbour Bridge was closed as tens of thousands joined a major pro-Palestine march in the country's largest city. The protest went ahead after the Supreme Court of New South Wales rejected a police bid to ban the event over safety concerns. Justice Belinda Rigg ruled in favour of organisers, citing the urgent need to respond to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Right, and for more analysis, we now move to Mark Summers in our newsroom. To you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mona, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, we're now joined from Cairo by Al Ahram Weekly Managing Editor, Khaled Dawood, who's joining us here on Qnews. Thank you very much for being here with us. Now, how do you view Egypt's efforts to deliver aid to the Gaza Strip?
Well, thanks, Mark, for having me. Of course, Egypt's role has been extremely important and vital since the beginning of this war. Nearly 2 years ago, but after the most recent closure that Israel has imposed on the occupied Gaza Strip, the situation has become tremendously unbearable for the majority of the Palestinians living in Gaza, different parts of Gaza, whether in the south or in the middle or in the north. And after what we see now as the horrifying images coming out of the starving children and the number of children who died, because of the intentional starvation policy followed by Israel, I think there has been a world outrage against Israel, forcing the current government to accept the demands by Egypt, other Arab countries, and other European nations as well, to allow them to drop from the air these aid packages that we've been seeing over the past week. But nevertheless, Egypt's effort is not limited to this. I think we're also witnessing a lot of diplomatic pressure to reach the kind of an agreement to end the war in Gaza and to return to the terms that were reached at the beginning of this year when Trump became president of the United States, allowing at least 600 trucks a day inside the Gaza Strip. But definitely, the Egyptian effort has been vital in coordination with other Arab countries and European nations in order to force Israel to give up its strict policy of punishing the entire Palestinian population in Gaza by depriving them from much needed food, fuel, and even medicine.
Yes, just on the fuel part, Khaled Dawood, the fuel trucks, of course, are being sent in, and this is to save the hospitals. This is what Egypt's doing to save the hospitals. Could you explain a bit about that?
Well, again, you know, the Israeli control is definitely included fuel because they know that this is very much needed for the entire infrastructure operations in Gaza, whether related to hospitals or even to drinking water, Mark. I mean, this is another major challenge for the Palestinian people. But again, as I said, I mean, it's becoming undeniable by the entire world, including by U.S. President Donald Trump, that the Palestinian people are suffering unbearable suffering. And it has to come to an end. The real fear, unfortunately, is that the Trump administration would only work on a new system to distribute aid within Gaza, despite the failed experience of the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, as we've seen from the visit by the U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, a couple of days ago, to the distribution points of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, that they praised the activity of this organization at the time the entire world almost condemned this operation that turned into a trap to kill Palestinians on a daily basis And even within the United States itself, we've seen letters signed by 44 senators asking the U.S. administration to reveal the details of this operation in coordination with Israel and to return to the system that the Palestinians have been used to for decades through UNRWA and other UN agencies for the distribution of food, fuel, and very much needed medicine. So again, we're witnessing this Egyptian effort to reopen the Rafah crossing point in order to speed up the entry of hundreds of trucks that are waiting on the Egyptian side for over 3 months so that they can reach the Palestinian people, not just in the southern parts, but all over Gaza, including the north that has been under the tight heat of the Israeli occupation force.
And of course, Egypt is a key mediator when it comes to trying to achieve a ceasefire. In your view, Khaled Dawood, where are we with that now, do you think?
I think it's getting very complicated. We've been hearing contradicting statements from the U.S. Middle East envoy after his recent visit to Israel that they are now working on a comprehensive agreement and not just a temporary ceasefire, without really setting limits of or the parameters of this so-called comprehensive agreement, because we're seeing that even the Israeli population are turning right now, maybe for the first time, the U.S. administration accusing Trump of not doing enough to pressure the Israeli Prime Minister to accept the terms of a ceasefire. Again, probably the pressure coming in from Israel is going to be very influential in determining the future of these negotiations, considering the internal situation in Israel and the pressures by the right-wing extremist parties such as those of Ben Gvir and Smotrich are trying to delay not just reaching a ceasefire agreement, but are actually pushing for the emptying the Gaza Strip from its population by forcing the people to displace to other nearby countries, and at the same time speaking about the expansion of settlements in the Gaza Strip. So, I mean, again, it's very important to continue the international pressure that we're seeing recently, not just from Egypt and Arab countries, but including from very influential European nations, including France, the United Kingdom, who have recently announced that they are not at all giving any credibility to the Israeli claims on the necessary measures they are taking against the Palestinians, and even moved a step further towards the recognition of the Palestinian state. So right now, practically speaking, we're seeing Israel and the United States isolated among the international community amid this outcry against the extreme violations and war crimes that are being committed against the Palestinian people.
And of course, there's been repeated provocative attacks by the extremist Israeli Minister Ben Gvir against Al-Aqsa Mosque. What is your view on that?
Again, you know, that's the consequence that we're paying the price for by having this extremist government in Israel. I mean, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, they're both members of organizations that were considered as terrorists and dubbed as terrorists even by the U.S. State Department. So again, I mean, some people would argue that, I mean, if you look at the Hamas claims concerning the October 7 attacks, one of the key reasons are the policies of those extremist ministers, whether in terms of violating the scarcity of and the significance of Al-Aqsa Mosque for Muslims and Arabs worldwide, or by the expansion of settlements in the occupied West Bank. And I guess that this is what the current Israeli government is aiming for, that even if they are being pressured to stop the war against Gaza, I mean, they would be demanding some heavy price from the current American administration in terms of recognizing its annexation of the West Bank and considering it to be part of the Israeli territory. So,
well, thank you.
Witnessing the contradicting pressures, but again, I think that we've never seen such an amount of international pressure and condemnation of the Israeli practices in the occupied territories. And I guess that this is one key reason to stop this war.
Thank you very much, Khaled Dawood, joining us, Al-Ahram Weekly Managing Editor. Thank you very much indeed. And then we go back to you, Mona.
Thank you so much, Mark, for the analysis. And now we move on to the latest developments in Iran.
We're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death.
Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai stated that the international community must move beyond issuing hollow statements and begin taking real action to save the innocent people of Gaza. He called for an immediate ban on the supply of weapons to Israel and the initiation of legal measures against it. Baghai added that Palestinians are being starved to death while being slaughtered with deadly and advanced American and German weapons. He also pointed out that food queues are being deliberately turned into death traps, leading to the deaths of patients suffering from a lack of food and medicine. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has announced that the International Atomic Energy Agency agreed to a new framework for cooperation with Tehran, which includes sending a delegation to hold negotiations. Araghchi described the upcoming talks as more challenging in light of the recent aggression, referring to the US and Israeli attacks, adding that all options are on the table. He further stated that Iran's nuclear facilities were severely damaged as a result of Israeli strike on the country. Iran's top military commander Amir Hatami affirmed that threats from Israel against Iran remain ongoing. Speaking to the official Islamic Republic news agency IRNA, Hatami stressed the importance of treating even a 1% threat as a 100% threat, warning against underestimating the enemy or assuming its threats have ended. Iran has lifted all remaining airspace restrictions imposed during its recent 12-day conflict with Israel. The Civil Aviation Organization, the CAO, announced both domestic and international flights have returned to pre-conflict levels, with Tehran's Marhabad International Airport resuming 24-hour operations for the first time since June. Iran had closed its airspace on June 13th following Israeli airstrikes. A ceasefire was reached on June 24, with airspace reopening gradually from June 26. Marhabad was the last to resume full operations previously restricted to daytime hours.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
On the Beirut port explosion commemoration day, Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has emphasized that holding those responsible accountable is a unifying national cause. Salam stressed that justice is essential for the rule of law, rejecting any settlement that compromises accountability or truth. He affirmed that no one is above the law and highlighted the importance of enforcing it. He expressed hope for a free, independent Lebanon capable of ending Israeli occupation, underscoring that decisions on war, peace and disarmament rest solely with the Lebanese state. An Israeli drone was spotted flying at high altitude over several towns in Lebanon's Nabatieh governorate, raising concerns among local residents and heightening tensions in the area. Another drone was seen flying at a very low altitude over the Saluqi Valley and surrounding areas, further fueling fears of renewed hostilities. Lebanese Justice Minister Adel Nasser stated that if Hezbollah refuses to hand over its weapons, it will not be allowed to drag Lebanon and its people into further turmoil. His remarks, made via the social media platform X, come as the Lebanese presidential palace prepares to host a pivotal session called by Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, scheduled for next Tuesday. Former Lebanese Prime Minister Saad Hariri stressed the need for justice for the victims of the Beirut port explosion 5 years after the tragedy occurred. Writing on X, Hariri said, 5 years since the Beirut port crime, and all of Lebanon is still waiting for justice for the victims, their families, the wounded and our wounded. Capital Beirut. He emphasized the importance of not losing hope in the issuance of the indictments and the start of a trial as soon as possible so that every guilty party is held accountable for their role in the explosion. The Israeli occupation army announced that it carried out a ground operation inside southern Syrian territory, during which it seized weapons and interrogated several individuals it claimed were suspects involved in arms smuggling in the area. According to a statement by the occupation forces, the operation was based on prior intelligence surveillance and an in-depth field investigation. The statement added that Israeli troops remain deployed at the site and continue their activities to prevent any terrorist elements from establishing a presence on the Syrian side of the border. Syrian media reported that armed groups launched an attack on internal security forces in the southern province of Suwayda, resulting in the death of one security officer and injuries to others. The reports indicated that these groups violated the ceasefire agreement reached last month following furious clashes between local factions which left hundreds dead. The countryside of Manbij in Syria's Aleppo province witnessed intense artillery shelling, injuring 4 Syrian army personnel and 3 civilians with varying degrees of wounds. The Syrian army accused the Syrian Democratic Forces of attempting to infiltrate one of its military positions, stating that its units carried out precision strikes on the sources of fire and identified a rocket launcher and a field artillery piece in the area. Moving on to Russia, where a Russian missile strike on the southern Ukrainian city of Mykolaiv has injured at least 7 people and damaged or destroyed dozens of homes and civilian infrastructure. 2 of the injured were hospitalized following the earlier attack. It has been reported that 23 private homes, 12 apartments, buildings, and a post office were damaged. Ukraine's force said Russia launched 76 drones and 7 missiles overnight, striking 8 locations, with air defenses downing 60 drones and 1 missile. Well, that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we've been covering. Egypt continues airdropping humanitarian aid over Gaza. The Israeli National Security Minister storms Al-Aqsa Mosque again. And Iran's foreign minister announces that the IAEA agrees to a new framework for cooperation with Tehran. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EGY to stay informed. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.